Hey everyone, I'm hanging out at work right now. It's late at night, nothing's really going on, and I've decided that I wanted to make a little video on Terminator Genisys, which just came out recently. I saw it when it came out, and I just have a couple of thoughts about it. One, no, it's not a terribly good movie. There's lots of problems with the logic of the plot. And a few things that are just kind of dumb in general, yeah, mistakes and everything like that. But there are a few things that I liked about it, and what I'm most curious about is if they do make more of these films from this particular timeline. Because the timeline has been permanently changed at this point. It is not the same timeline that we've been watching with Terminators 1, 2, and 3. Now it's going to be very, very different going forward. I'm real curious as to exactly where the storyline is going to head from here, because it could head in a completely different direction at this point. If you haven't seen the movie and you're planning to, I want to get into some specifics, which of course is spoiler territory, so you shouldn't watch any further. Watch this video any further if you don't want to know that stuff, if you're planning on seeing the movie. For those of you who have seen the movie or aren't planning to, don't care, aren't interested, you know, go ahead and watch. You'll be fine. So the Terminator movies up to this point have all been sort of hinging on the fact that the machines are going to wipe out all of humanity, if not for this one person, this one particular person who managed to inspire the surviving humans to revolt against the machines and destroy the evil machine intelligence called Skynet and save mankind. And that, of course, is John Connor. The movies really don't tell any part of the story beyond that point. Because at that point, basically in the timeline, when you have the victory of the humans in the distant future in 2029, which was quite distant back in 1984 when the first movie came out, the victory was contingent upon, of course, the this hero character, John Connor, continuing to exist. And Skynet wanted to wipe out his existence and therefore wipe out the possibility of humans successfully revolting against the machines by sending an assassin back in time to 1984 before John Connor was born to kill his mother. As the psychiatrist in the first movie says, retroactive abortion. Anyway, so of course, once the humans who have just destroyed Skynet realize that this has happened, they basically send one of their soldiers back in time to stop this from happening, to stop the Terminator that was sent back in time from finding Sarah Connor before she became a mother and destroying it, so that John Connor can be born. And in so doing, of course, the soldier that they sent back in time happens to be the one guy that has fallen in love with Sarah, with John Connor's mother, because he was given a photograph of her at some point. So when, in the course of protecting her, of course, she falls in love with him, I guess. They have this romance, they spend the night together, and of course she gets pregnant with John Connor. So the whole sort of logic loop time travel story is one that really appealed to me when I first saw it. Now, there's two different kinds of time travel movies. The first one is you go back in time and you mess around with stuff, and when you get back to your own time, your present is different because you have changed things in the past leading up to that timeline. The other kind of time travel story is one in which you go back in time, you do things, but your present remains unchanged because your presence in the past has always been a part of the timeline that you are a part of. For example, Back to the Future changes the present, but 12 Monkeys doesn't. 12 Monkeys, the present remains the same, or the time, the period that sort of serves as the present in that film anyway. So what happens in Terminator Genisys is they show basically sort of the lead up to what happened basically in the first Terminator movie. You see the humans storm the gates at Skynet, destroy it, everybody's won, but they discover, oh no, Skynet sent a Terminator back in time. Hey, you, Kyle Reese, we need you to go back in time and protect Sarah so that John can be born. But once he gets back there, of course, we learn that there have been some further developments beyond that. the Terminator, or a Terminator I should say, went back in time to try and kill Sarah when she was a little girl rather than she was a 20-year-old waitress in 1973, which happened to be the year I was born, for example. Why did I say for example? I don't know. And so once Kyle Reese gets back to 1984, this Terminator, which saved Sarah's life when she was a little girl, has been protecting and training her to be a fighter for years, so that has, you know, turned everything around. Everything's upside down right now. So the objectives have changed. Now it's important for Skynet to ensure its own creation by figuring out exactly when it was bound to be created, because that whole timeline's been changed. Originally it was 1997, and then it became 20 years later, 2017. And this information sort of comes at very, very strange ways, like Kyle begins to have new memories of things he never experienced because the timeline has been changed. And the Terminator, who's working with the both of them, offers a few different sort of weird theories about how that could possibly happen. But there's a few things that don't really make sense. One, the Terminator finding the original 1984 Terminator, despite the fact that it really couldn't have any idea as to where it would show up. Unless, of course, Sarah did some research after the events of 1984 in the original timeline, found out that 3 guys got killed at that observatory, and concluded that the Terminator was the one that did it because one of them was missing his clothes, and therefore knew when to send the Terminator back in time in order to take out the original Terminator. That's excusable. But what isn't excusable is how the T-1000 Terminator could have found Kyle Reese, because in the original timeline, Reese runs into a cop and when he comes back from the future, and then escapes from him. But in this new version, it's a different cop, and it's not a cop at all. Of course, it's a T-1000 assassin trying to take out Kyle Reese. Now, how could anyone have possibly known where Reese would show up in 1984? I mean, Reese couldn't have told anyone because he's totally unfamiliar with the geography of Los Angeles. He's from a post-apocalyptic future in 2029. He doesn't know intersections, he doesn't know landmarks or anything like that. He shows up in some random place. It's very unlikely he could have told someone how that happened, where he showed up, so that the T-1000 would have information to know exactly where to find him. Okay? And this raises another question. Sarah tells the story of when she was a little girl, the Terminator, the Arnold Schwarzenegger Terminator, saves her from another Terminator that was sent to kill her in 1973, but that was a T-1000, a liquid metal Terminator. When he saves her, apparently, he takes her away and the T-1000 can't find her. What happened to the T-1000 after that? Is it the same T-1000 that we see attack Kyle Reese at the beginning of Terminator Genisys? And that's just very bizarre. It was hanging around for all that time. Somehow it had information where Reese would show up. I don't know, it doesn't make a lot of sense. Also, the Terminator managed to build its own time travel device, so it could send Sarah and Reese to 2017 in order to stop Skynet from going online, the new date that Skynet goes online. But he only sends them there like a day and a few hours before the thing is set to go online. It could have been, he could send them there with a couple of months to spare so they could get ready, but no, it was only like a day. That's kind of dumb as well. But anyway, you figure that the Terminators, both the Terminator and the good Terminator who's working with the heroes, and the bad Terminator that's trying to assure Skynet's creation, would maybe have information on how to build time portals to begin with. And that certainly plays into how Skynet gets created in this version to begin with. But what's really interesting is how nobody seems to stop and think for a second, hey, wait a second, if Kyle and if Reese and Sarah jump forward to 2017, then John Connor might still yet be born, but he won't be born in 1985 originally, so he's only going to be like 11 years old in 2029. Obviously, with the timeline changing, with 1997 no longer being Judgment Day and now it's 2017, apparently it's perfectly all right that he not be the exact same age he originally needs to be. But still, we're only talking about, you know, we're talking about a very, very sort of condensed, everything's been shifted up one. And since Skynet is basically destroyed at the end of, or Skynet's prevented from coming into existence and infecting all of the computers all over the world and devices and what have you, then maybe Judgment Day won't happen after all. It probably will if there's going to be more Terminator sequels, but John Connor as a hero may not actually be necessary. And at the end of Terminator Genisys, Sarah, of course, and Reese have not gotten together, so she's not pregnant with anyone, especially John, so there may be no need whatsoever for John Connor to even exist in the first place, which means there's no need for Reese and Sarah to actually be a couple. But they end up a couple anyway, just because they have to have, two people kiss at the end of the movie, just like so many other movies like it. Arnold's now a T-1000. His microprocessor from his T-800 head fell into a vat of liquid metal, the T-1000 substance. But apparently you need a CPU in order to make that stuff work. So now a T-1000 character comes to life with that CPU, and since it had Arnold's CPU, he decides to make his shape, his original self. But that raises some odd questions about T2, because how could a liquid metal flatten itself out or turn into a liquid form and then with the molten steel and then become back together again if it actually needed a chip in order to make it work? I thought the whole point of a T-1000 is that it didn't have a chip, that it was just a whole bunch of just particles, little microscopic particles that merge together and then form shapes. I don't know, it doesn't make a lot of sense. But what's cool about what happened in Terminator Genisys is what could possibly come in later movies. There's, at this point, the possibility that John Connor may never exist, and it may not be necessary for him to exist if Judgment Day, doesn't happen like it did before. There could be a completely new savior. And also, what's Arnold going to be capable of now that he's a T-1000 instead of a T-800? And this is the only Terminator movie in which an Arnold T-800 Terminator actually manages to not be completely destroyed at the end of the movie. So, more with him, I guess. Anyway, I'm not saying that it's a good movie, and I'm definitely not saying that it's a good Terminator movie, but there's some interesting stuff that happened in it that could pay off further down the line if they make more Terminator movies, which they may not. It could be that this is the last Terminator movie, at least with Arnold. Who knows? Anyway, just had a few thoughts about that. By the way, if you have not yet seen Jim Gisriel's review of Terminator Genisys, he rips it to complete shreds, and it's totally awesome. So I'll leave a link to his review in the description below so you can check that out if you haven't already. And just subscribe to him, because he does great reviews on a lot of the major movies that come out. Thanks for watching, guys. See you later.